Good evening, and welcome to the City of Topeka's Planning Commission meeting. We are a commission appointed by the mayor and city council to plan for the orderly growth and development of the community, to hold public hearings, and to make recommendations to the governing body on planning items. Please note that the governing body rules state that the public hearings for planning cases shall be conducted solely by the Planning Commission. There is no additional public hearing that will be conducted by the governing body. Tonight's cases are tentatively scheduled to be heard by the governing body next month. Agendas can be found at topeka.org. Some of tonight's cases involve public hearings. For those cases, the procedure will be as follows. First, the planning department staff will summarize the case. Next, we will hear from the applicant or their representative. Then we will receive public testimony. Comments are limited to 4 minutes. For agenda items that do not involve public hearings, public comment is allowed provided that the person has signed up on Topeka Speaks or has notified staff prior to 5 p.m. today. Again, comments are limited to 4 minutes. Finally, at the end of regular business, the commission will entertain general comment regarding matters related to the commission business provided that the person has signed up on Topeka Speaks or has notified staff prior to 5 p.m. today. Comments are limited to 4 minutes. Amanda, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Ms. Hannon?
Me here.
Ms. Herron?
Here.
Mr. Kaut?
Abstain.
This is just attendance.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm here.
Mr. Mock?
Here.
Mr. Nager?
Here.
Ms. Pearson?
Here.
We have enough for a quorum.
All right. Then next is approval of the minutes. If anyone has a motion regarding that.
I would motion to approve the minutes.
All right, a motion.
I second it.
Any discussion on the motion? See none?
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Mr. Nager?
Aye.
Mr. Mock?
Aye.
Mr. Kaut?
I'm still here, but I abstain.
Ms. Herron?
Aye.
Ms. Hannon?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Minutes pass.
Next is declaration of any conflict of interest or ex parte communications by members of the commission.
I just wanted to communicate. I've had several discussions with realtors in the area in reference to duplex, triplex, and some of the discussion points from today, but I don't think it's anything that'll hinder my ability to decide.
Not seeing any others. Moving on to action items. The first action item is Z25-5 by Ardent Real Estate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is case C2505. The applicant is Ardent Real Estate Group. They are requesting to amend the zoning map from C4 Commercial District to M3 Multiple Family Dwelling District. The property is located on the east side of Armstrong Avenue. It is south of 29th Street, just about a quarter mile west of the Wanamaker corridor. The site contains 0.88 acres. It is an undeveloped piece of ground. They have proposed, this is a speculative rezone. There's no specific development plan attached to the proposal. They're proposing multiple family residential uses. The character of the area is shown on some of the attached graphics. The top photo in the right-hand corner is a picture of the subject site looking onto the high V to the east. Surrounding zoning is C4 Commercial District to the north. The south is O&I 2 Office and Institutional District. East is C4 and a retail shopping center. And the west is a PUD for M2 uses. It contains a retirement home. This is designated office in the future land use map of the Land Use and Growth Management Plan. The office category comprises business, medical, health, and professional office centers. However, on page 46 of the plan, medium density is also appropriate in these areas, as it is a transition between commercial uses and lower intensity uses such as residential. The applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting that was back on June 30th. They had initially applied for the M2 zoning and since changed their proposal. That's why this hearing has been delayed a month. Applicant staff is recommending approval of the M3 district, and I am open for any questions that you may have. The applicants are here to take your questions as well.
Any questions for staff from the commissioners? Commissioner Pearson?
Help my memory. Haven't we seen this case before? Not like the delayed version, but another version of it? Nope? Okay.
This is the first zoning action on this property.
Okay, thank you.
We saw one like a block away. Yeah. Any other questions for staff from commissioners? All right, then moving on to the applicant or some representative.
Good evening, Walker Bassett here with Ardent Real Estate Group. I don't know if I had to say anything, but thought I'd just come up here. As you can see, undeveloped land, we need housing and more multifamily. We're the ones that are doing the multifamily to the west, so this kind of ties in well with it. Just think this would be a good project for redevelopment, so I appreciate it. And does anybody have any questions?
Any questions?
When do you expect to develop the land?
To be determined. Once we get this approved, then we can really figure out what we're going to do and get the financing and the land and the layout figured out. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
thank you.
Then next is public testimony. So if there's any member of the public who'd like to speak to this specific application, just feel free to come up and you'll have 4 minutes to speak. Just checking one more time. Any member of the public who would like to speak on this one? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on this item. And then we move on to just general discussion by commissioners. Commissioner Calupi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the staff has reported, this project looks to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's consistent with the M3 zoning classification, or the purpose behind the M3 zoning, and it's certainly consistent with the objectives of the 2020 housing study. So when commission discussion is over, I would support a motion to approve.
I second.
All right. So there's a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, then we're ready for the roll.
Mr. Burks?
Aye.
Ms. Hannon?
Aye.
Ms. Herron?
Aye.
Mr. Kaup?
Aye.
Mr. Mock?
Aye.
Mr. Nager?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Nay.
Motion passes.
All right. Next is Z25-2, which is at 625 Southwest Polk. So I will turn it over to staff for their presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. This is showing Z2506. It should say Z2502 on the presentation. This is a rezoning that was initially heard at the June meeting, but it was continued to this meeting because the applicant was not able to attend that June meeting. And I believe you guys had some questions for them. So just a quick recap of this proposal. It's in the Old Town neighborhood, 6th and Polk. It is a half-acre parcel, currently zoned O&I 2, office and institutional, and the applicant is proposing M3 multiple family. It's been vacant for a few years. Previously, there was a church on the land. The applicant, a developer is possibly considering a 12-unit apartment building on the site. That would be also covered under M2 zoning. Maximum density for the M2 district is 25 units per acre, so on a half-acre site, you could do up to 12. The maximum density for M3 is 40 units per acre, so technically you could do up to 20 units on this site under the proposed zoning. I think practically it might be challenging to get to 20 units with our off-street parking requirements, which, Mike, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think there are 2 per the first 20 dwelling units?
That is correct.
Yeah. So that is a little on the zoning. The character of the area, it's really dominated by multifamily development. There is some single-family in the neighborhood, and then some strip commercial along 6th. The future land use plan does designate this area as medium-density residential, which includes the M2 and M3 zoning districts in the Old Town Neighborhood Plan from 2003. The NIA has made efforts in recent years and months to try to secure this land and potentially use it for a park space or some kind of open space. And I believe the Old Town NIA president is here and wants to speak on that. Staff's recommendation is approval of the rezoning from 092 to M3. And I'll now take any questions.
Any questions for staff from commissioners?
Thanks, Chair. So a couple of questions. Could you clarify the off-street parking requirement? You said 2, can you restate that, please?
Yeah, sorry, it's 2 off-street parking stalls per dwelling unit for the first 20 units, and then 1.5 parking stalls per unit under 800 square feet after that. So basically, if they wanted to do an M3 20-unit apartment complex, they would need 40 parking stalls,
Okay.
Which would really necessitate a garage or some kind of parking underneath, yeah.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Not seeing any. Next, we'll hear from the applicant or some representative.
Hi, good evening. My name is Carolina, and I'm the owner of Calupi Investments. We have the lot since last year, basically, September last year. So I was not here on the last meeting because I wasn't aware that I needed to be here in person. We had a previous meeting before on June 4th that was done online. So when I got the notice for the meeting in June 16, there's nothing here that says that I have to be here in person. So here I am, if you guys have any questions.
Any questions from commissioners?
Sure.
I was the one that proposed to table the matter until you could be present, and it's just really a matter of form, that this is an important issue, and there is a little bit, I don't want to call it controversy, but a little disagreement as to the project with respect to the neighborhood and their interest in a park, and so it was important that you be here to address that.
I'm aware. I was watching all the meeting online, and I didn't even know that I couldn't communicate with you guys, because the previous online meeting, I was able to talk to everyone. So when I was watching the meeting and hearing everybody say that I wasn't here because I didn't want to be here, I didn't have any interest, I was like, that's not true. I didn't even know. So I just suggest that this letter needs to be redone, so people that are out of state like myself, we know that we need to be here in person, because there's nothing here that says that. And yeah, I completely understand.
And I don't know if we're going to hear from anybody else tonight about the park, the desire for a park.
Yeah,
But what I wanted to tell you was that we appreciate the fact that, from all appearances, that you were engaging in good faith discussions with them and provided a time period, though. So I think that's That's
Thank you.
to your credit.
Yeah, we bought the lot, and we are a small investment company from Florida, so we have a partnership with a builder. We are planning to do a 12-dwelling unit there. We had this previous meeting with the neighborhood, and they told us about the park. I gave them 30 days. I removed the lot from the market to give them the opportunity to buy it from me, because from my point of view, of course, I wanted to sell it. And if the park is gonna benefit them, I'm okay with that, because they were gonna pay the price that I was asking. However, they were not able to get the funds. So I just don't think it's fair that I don't get my rezoning and I cannot continue with my project, because so far, what is going on is that I keep receiving messages from the person that I hired to mow the lot that there's full of junk in there, because of course, it's a vacant lot. So it's not a park and it's not gonna be anything if we don't have a decision. So the plan is to build a 12-dwelling unit, and as far as I know, and I talked to the city, the rezoning process is not gonna prevent the neighborhood to have a park if they had the funds to buy it from me. So let's say we have the rezoning and they come back and they say, hey, we have the funds, I'm gonna sell it to them. It's not that I am gonna choose a builder instead of them. They don't have the funds. So there's nothing that I can do on my side as a buyer in this situation. I gave them 30 days. It's been more than 30 days now. So if you guys have any questions, I'm here. I'm not opposed to the park, that's what I want to say, but I just can't wait forever.
We appreciate that, your comments. I do need a clarification, though. I'm not
Sure.
quite sure. If it sounds like if you keep ownership, you will develop it with a 12-unit, or are you trying to sell it?
No, so we have a partnership to develop a project, and then we're gonna sell the project and the land to builders. So every single person that contact me, besides the neighborhood, they want to build a multifamily place there. Right now it's commercial. Nobody wants commercial there, because the area around doesn't need any more commercial buildings there. So everyone that contacted me wanted multifamily, so that's why I started the rezoning process. And after I started the rezoning process is when I heard about the park. So yeah, so the plan is if they don't.
So if I understand you correctly, that your intent is to sell the land, period?
Yes, that's correct, 100% correct.
Okay, your company is not developing it?
No, we are not. We are not builders.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Next,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Next, we move on to any public comment. So any members of the public who would like to speak on this specific issue.
Not sure which mic. Good evening, Commissioners. I am Shamika King-Sims. I am President of Historic Old Town Neighborhood Improvement Association. I have been involved with this NIA, which is a low and moderate income neighborhood, since about 2019. And I came into leadership positions starting in 2021, where I was a secretary. During that time, myself and the then President Mike Spatafor began conversations with Shawnee County Parks and Rec to try and spearhead the process of getting a park. So I'll get off into the weeds because I'm kind of emotional. So I have 4 points that I want to make to you guys so that you kind of understand a little bit more about where the neighborhood is coming from. First, I would like to recognize Ms. Perez's point that she has been communicative with the neighborhood. When I presented the issue that we have regarding the park and her desires to increase the density, she did try to meet us where we are. First asking for $25,000 and then going down to 1,000, but nothing from nothing leaves nothing. We have no money as an NIA because we are designed as an advocacy group. We are not capital investors. So we turn to our municipality, which is Shawnee County, which owns Shawnee County Parks and Rec, who we've been in discussion with since 2021 to try to move this towards a park. I'm going to flip my points around to the Shawnee County part. Since this has come to their attention, it has been a feverish effort on our part, my part particularly, to talk to the commissioners. As you guys probably know, you cannot talk to all 3 commissioners at once. You can only talk to them one at a time, otherwise it triggers CORA. That has made the process a lot slower for us. I had a very come to Jesus moment with one of the commissioners today while I was at work. And while I cannot give you, and I wish that I could, written proof that this has a real possibility, I can only give you my word that I was told by this commissioner, there is still hope, don't give up. I cannot give you more than that. What I do know is that if we give any sort of out, the asking price goes up, particularly Shawnee County will, well, sorry, your price went up and we only capped out at so much. This is what you asked us to spend total. And I'm trying not to give people outs. I'm trying to hold their feet to the fire because this neighborhood deserves it. If you've been in this part of the neighborhood, you know that it is amuck with poverty. And I am not exaggerating. If you were to go there now, you would see people with carts pushing through and old couches and trash buildup. This neighborhood needs revitalization, and I promise you that an M3 density is not going to change the trajectory that we have seen already for the last 50 years. Some of these projects, some of these housing units have been up since 1970. They don't look any better. That's the fact of the matter. We, as a neighborhood, have just finally started to get a chance to use our voice with our Dreams 1 designation. Just now, after 20 years, I won't point them out, but there was someone who was in this room who jokingly said to me, oh, if the neighborhood had just got Dreams 1 a couple of years earlier, we could have put this in your neighborhood plan. And while that was a dark joke, it was a dark joke, but there was truth in that. But we are running with the processes that we are given. And when we have the opportunity, we take them. So while we do not consent to a higher density because we don't need that, we do understand that Ms. Perez, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing, has been as fair as she can be, but that's not enough.
All right, we're going to move on to if any commissioners have any questions for.
Thank you, Ms. Sims. Did I hear you correctly that this is not in your neighborhood plan?
This area has not been identified in our 2003 neighborhood plan. We are
2003?
correct. We are currently working on our neighborhood plan right now. We had a 2.5-hour meeting last week on land usage. I don't know if Historic Holiday Park or Valley Park spent that much time on their land usage, but it was tense, and I think some people in here can attest to that. It is not currently in our plan. It is asked for in our 2003 plan to evaluate what we could do for that, but I was never given a playbook. There is no guidelines. I'm just winging it, using every piece of social capital I got, trying to get this done.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? All right. Seeing none, thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on this specific item? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, and we will move on to discussion by commissioners. Any discussion? All right. Oh, Commissioner Calup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess this is going to sound like a repeat, but based on the staff report, I mean, what we're seeing is a proposal that's consistent with the comprehensive plan, is consistent with the Old Town Neighborhood Plan, and again, it's consistent with the objectives of the 2020 housing study to increase the amount of multifamily zone property within the city limits. I respect everything we heard tonight here, but I don't know that we have the basis to reject the applicant.
Any other discussion? Then I'd look for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none.
Ms. Pearson?
Nay.
Mr. Nager?
Aye.
Mr. Mock?
Aye.
Mr. Calp?
Aye.
Ms. Herron?
Aye.
Ms. Hannon?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, that is the end of our action items for this evening. Next is our standing report for the Committee on Housing. So I will turn that over to, is that Commissioner Cowper staff?
Commissioner Kalb, I will note that we have a short presentation we can show after Commissioner Kalb goes.
Okay, all right, then I'll turn it over to Commissioner Kalb.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do have a couple of comments I need to make, and I will try to move through quickly, but I think some of the things I have to say.
Jim, you want to hang on a second? It's a little noisy out here. Let it calm down a little bit.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Well, a couple of comments to make that relate to the revised recommendation of the Housing Committee, and I think it's important for the planning commissioners to know what the thinking was of the Housing Committee, and I think what I have to report tonight will be of interest to the people in the audience here, and maybe allay some of the negatives that we've heard to this point. As Planning Commission knows, from previous reports of the Housing Committee and from staff presentations, we started our study of the missing middle, the small multifamily housing, over a year ago. And our touchstone was and continues to be the good old 2020 housing study, which identified some very serious quality and quantity problems with Topeka's housing stock. One of the most important findings of the study was that by the year 2040, Topeka would need to have 14,400 new housing units constructed. 14,400. That was in 2020, and since that time, the situation has only worsened. There's been very little new residential construction in Topeka. Like I said, that the report, the study said 14,400 by the year 2040. That works out to 720 housing units a year. In the last 3 years, the last 3 complete years, 2022, 2023, 2024, we had 101 housing units per year. Not 720, 101. in that averaged annually over that 3-year period. Now, there are a lot of factors that are beyond the city's control. You have high cost of materials, you have a shortage of builders, just generally increased construction costs, you have high mortgage rates, and to make matters even worse, the good old federal government and the state of Kansas have both cut housing funds and programs, and the effect of those cuts is going to make it very difficult for large multifamily development to be built, probably for years to come. So those are beyond our control, but zoning regulations also influence the housing market, and those regulations are within the city's control. As you know from presentations, you've seen this repeatedly from the staff, 87% of the land area within the city limits that is zoned residential is restricted to single-family housing. The Topeka housing market is restricted by this limitation on private property rights. It's an overregulation of those property rights. So, given all of that, the proposal of the Housing Committee that was first brought to the Planning Commission for your input was what hundreds of cities across the country have already done or are doing now, and that is to allow duplexes of right in single-family districts and 3- and 4-plex housing as conditional uses. The Housing Committee vetted this idea with at least 4 neighborhood associations, with the Citizens Advisory Council, with home builders, with the public by means of an online survey, with the public by means of comments that we've heard at a number of Planning Commission meetings. We also have met with the City Council's Policy and Finance Committee on the proposal. And like you, we have seen many emails that have been sent to the Planning Office and provided to the Planning Commission. We heard some support from some of the neighborhood associations, from builders, and from some citizens. And there has been constructive criticism from citizens as well. There have also been opposing statements that I think have been made without evidence and even, unfortunately, some misinformation. Everyone seems to acknowledge that Topeka needs more and better housing. That's not an issue in dispute. Many people just don't want that housing in their neighborhood or on their block. And we obviously have a good, well-known term for that, NIMBYism. Some opponents say that missing middle housing is going to somehow change the character of their neighborhood. Some have strongly held objections to landlords, and some have strongly held objections to Topekans who rent, whether they rent by choice or by necessity. And that prejudice against fellow Topekans is hard to listen to. It's discouraging. So in short, the Housing Committee, and I think particularly planning staff, have endured some harsh criticisms, but there are no apologies here for trying to improve housing opportunities for the citizens of Topeka. The truth is, while I and others, I think, still believe duplexes of right in single-family neighborhoods is best for Topeka, the reality is that the Housing Committee has concluded that of right just won't fly. The opponents have seemed to focus most on that of right idea, and as far as our recommendation presented to you tonight, they win. At the August 5 Housing Committee meeting, the full committee voted unanimously to recommend to the Planning Commission that a text amendment to the R1 and R2 zoning regulations be scheduled for public hearing. And that amendment would allow 2-, 3-, and 4-plex housing in the R1 and R2 districts, but only as conditional uses, only upon the issuance of a conditional use permit by the governing body. And the truth is, to me, that this recommendation is not what is needed, but it is what we think is politically possible. And there's an old saying that when you mix truth with politics, you get politics. That's my report, Mr. Chairman.
All right, then we will move over to staff for more specifics of what exactly the current proposal is.
Okay, so. Maybe I can sit over here. All right, so I just have a few slides that clarifies the committee's changed position on this, the recommendation. So just to clarify, the current zoning regulations, under the current regulations, this applies to the R districts, R1 and R2 primarily, which are single-family residential districts. Duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes are prohibited, and if someone wants to do a project on a property that's zoned R1 or R2, they would have to rezone the property. They'd have to apply for rezoning. It's possible, but that's something they would have to do. So the previous recommendation of the Planning Commission Housing Committee was that duplexes be permitted by right, by a building permit essentially, subject to special standards. But that triplexes and quadplexes would require a conditional use permit. Again, that's the previous recommendation of the Planning Commission Housing Committee. That's the one that's been discussed with neighborhoods for the past several months now. So the revised recommendation by the Housing Committee, with support of staff, is to allow duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes by a conditional use permit. The conditional use permit process involves notification of neighboring property owners, public hearing by Planning Commission, and a decision by the governing body. So this is what that text amendment would look like. It's not very complicated. In this column on the far left, this is a land use table in the zoning code in 18.60.010 of the zoning code. That far left column applies to R1, R2, and R3 zoning. I don't even know if there's any R3 zoning. That's a zoning classification that's in the code, but I don't even know if there's any R3 zoning in the city at all. So really what we're talking about is R1 and R2. So instead of that being prohibited, those uses being prohibited, it would require a conditional use permit. So that would change from a dash to a C in those cells. So just a comparison here between what's currently required. Again, someone has a piece of property, they want to build a duplex on it, or a triplex or quadplex, they would need to rezone the property. They would have to apply for rezoning. So this process is essentially the same. There are a couple differences that are important, but it's essentially the same. So both with a rezoning and a conditional use permit as proposed, the developer, builder, owner is required to submit an application up front, pay the fees up front. The fees are around $700 on a property that's of this size. It's a non-refundable fee. Also, under both processes, a neighborhood information meeting is required prior to the public hearing. The neighborhood information meeting requirement is not in the code. It's something that by practice and by policy, we have required of every applicant who's going to be applying for rezoning or conditional use permit. Under both processes, it requires a notice and a public hearing by the Planning Commission. So that notice goes to every property owner within 200 feet of the site. That's what's in code. Going back to the neighborhood information meeting, it goes a little beyond that. It's everyone within 300 feet of the site would receive a notice. That's every owner, not necessarily every resident, every owner. Also, under both situations, the Planning Commission does not make the final decision. They make a recommendation to the governing body. The final decision is by the governing body. Under a conditional use permit, which is what's proposed, the decision is based on the golden factors and the conditional use permit guidelines that are in the code, under the conditional use permit provisions in a chapter in the zoning code. Under a rezoning, the decision is based on golden factors. And so this next point is pretty important. For a conditional use permit, as proposed, approval would be tied to a development plan. So what I anticipate, or what we anticipate, is that if someone were to apply for a conditional use permit, we'd have a pre-application meeting with them, we would hear what they're proposing, and we'd advise them to submit a development plan. So let's say it's a vacant lot, they would need to submit a site plan, they would need to submit other plans as needed, they'd probably have to submit a statement of operations. Under a rezoning application, except under exceptional circumstances, approval is not tied to any development plan. You apply for rezoning, you are accorded any rights under that zoning. So under rezoning, there's actually a bigger risk, because it's not tied to a development plan. It's just, you're allowed, and then it's by right, and you meet the very minimal standards of the zoning code, dimensional standards. Again, in our conditional use permit, approval would be tied to a plan. Under both circumstances, building permits are required for new construction and conversions. Under both circumstances, building codes apply. Inspections are required. So as you can see, the process is very similar. There just are some important differences between the conditional use and a rezoning. The process typically takes, if things go well, the process typically takes 90 days or more from the time the city receives a complete application. It kind of depends on the timing of the application, but it's not a quick process. It takes a long time. The downside to going with a conditional use permit from, if you're trying to promote housing, is it adds uncertainty compared to a build by right, and it adds a lot of time. That's the downside relative to it being allowed by right. So this is just an illustration of what you're looking at in a neighborhood. So this happens to be a neighborhood in North Topeka, and in North Topeka there are some vacant lots. And in this particular area, a lot of this zoning is R2, single family. That blue zoning on the left is a mixed-use zoning district. But a lot of this is on R2. There are several vacant lots. So if someone under today's circumstances came to the city staff and said, I want to build a duplex on this lot, what we would advise them is they have to apply for rezoning. One of the challenges is that one of these sites, if it's mid-block, you're talking about one lot being zoned to M1 for a duplex. For a triplex or quadplex, it'd be M1A. And it would be isolated within a sea of R2 zoning. And it would not be tied to a development plan. Under a conditional use process, it wouldn't change the zoning map, but it would be tied to it would be approved by resolution, and it would be tied to a development plan. One thing, that's the end of the slides. One thing I just want to mention is we did receive a lot of written comment. We received a pretty impressive report by a person named Jerry Palmer, who is here, and he and I had a conversation last week as well. And he makes 3 points, and I won't dwell on this, but I just think staff should respond to these. So he did a lot of homework, which is impressive. He looked at the city of Minneapolis, which they changed their codes to allow duplexes by right throughout the city. And the question was, did it really accomplish the goals? Did it really result in a lot of housing? And it didn't really result in large numbers of housing. And the point that's being made here is that this is not going to result in a lot of housing. And staff does not disagree with that. It's not a silver bullet that's going to suddenly open the floodgates to a lot of housing. There aren't that many building permits for housing in the first place in Topeka, but it would allow some. Over time, it could accumulate and allow more. The proposal to allow duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes more flexibility in single-family residential neighborhoods is just one small part of what's required to implement what's in the housing study and to reach housing goals. It's an important part. It addresses missing middle housing. It addresses largely unsubsidized housing, what was referred to in the report as workforce housing. But it's not intended to result in a lot of units. The second point is, if any proposal is adopted, it should exclude application to districts designated by the City of Topeka as historic conservation districts. So those districts, in the case of Topeka, are Potwin, College Hill, and Historic Holiday Park. One thing I'll point out is that I believe a lot of the people that are concerned about this being in Potwin, some of those folks probably aren't in actually the Potwin Historic District. They live east or west of that district. in, say, what's Auburndale or Kenwood. Also in College Hill, the historic district in College Hill is along College Avenue. It is probably a quarter of the College Hill neighborhood, maybe a fifth of the College Hill neighborhood. So it doesn't really keep, that by itself is not going to keep duplexes out of those neighborhoods necessarily. The other point is that the conservation districts and historic districts are really not land use restrictions, they're really design restrictions. They're not intended to prohibit land uses. In the case of the historic district, any development that happens on a property in a historic district goes through something called certified local government review. And certified local government review does not analyze the land use. It analyzes the manifestation of land use. So if, say, someone was to propose converting a home in one of these neighborhoods, and it's an historic district, and they're trying to convert a home to a duplex, that's probably going to result in an additional door, additional entry on the outside. Maybe it would affect the driveway or affect the external appearance of the building. That is addressed by the historic districts, but the historic districts really don't address land use directly. I think the other thought too is that if this only applies to those districts, it's not really an equitable way to address that concern, because there are a lot of areas in the city, and some of those neighbors probably don't really want to allow duplexes either, but they would not be affected by this if you limited it or restricted it in the historic districts or the neighborhood conservation districts. The third point is, that's made here by the person that's commenting, is that if any proposal adopted should require conversion of a single-family structure to a multiple structure by application for a conditional use permit. And that's exactly what the committee is proposing today. That's what they're recommending today. So I don't want to sound like I'm criticizing this, because I'm really not. Mr. Palmer did a lot of homework. It's very interesting what he found in his analysis of Minneapolis. And it was very well thought out. It wasn't just an emotional argument. It was very well thought out. But I wanted to address those comments in that report. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to kind of follow, even though this isn't an action item, so we don't necessarily follow the procedure, I'm going to more or less follow the procedure. Any questions from commissioners for staff? Or I guess for Commissioner Cowell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one thing, and Mike, thank you for the new slides and for the comments you made. And I've also had conversations with Jerry Palmer, who's a longtime acquaintance, friend. I had a lot of respect for Jerry. Just on the first point that he raised, and you covered it pretty well, so I'll muddy the water. Okay, that is the, what is it going to accomplish? And, it's, you could make an educated guess, and you can look at what's happened in other communities, and what Jerry has put in his written comments are correct, truthful. We don't know what mortgage rates are going to do a year from now. We don't know if there's going to be some magic employer, land on the doorstep at Topeka and increase the housing demand. We don't know any of those things. We're not holding our breath on either of those. My thought, and this is a semi-educated guess, is if this proposal were to pass the governing body and put into play, I would be delighted. I would be delighted if it would result in 5 or 10 new duplexes going into Topeka that would not have been constructed otherwise, okay? 5 or 10. And like we have upwards of 1,000 city blocks, residential city blocks in Topeka. Is that possible? I mean, I think somewhere in that area.
I don't know.
Yeah, nobody's ever counted them.
I've never calculated that.
There's a lot of them, And you spread 5, 10 duplexes over 1,000 city blocks, a year. It's not exactly opening the floodgates. But it is important for the people that move into those duplexes. And it's important for the people that move into housing that is vacated by people who move into those duplexes. You know, we still have a trickle-down housing. We've talked about this before, you know. You build $1 million house, somebody moves in it from a $700,000 house. And then somebody moves into that $700,000 house from a $400,000 house. It happens. So any new construction of housing in Topeka is beneficial and consistent with the 2020 housing study. So anyway, thank you, Mike.
Any other questions or comments for staff?
I have a question. Between the two processes, conditional use permit and rezoning, are the fees different?
If they're different by $50 or
Okay.
something.
Is it a flat fee or is it based on like?
It's a flat fee.
Okay. And then
It's rezoning, the rezoning fees are based on size, but we're talking about probably properties that are acre or less.
Okay.
Certainly less than 5 acres, yeah.
And do either processes necessitate documents done by a design professional for the process? I'm thinking of everything it might cost to take to get to one way or the other.
So a conditional use permit application is going to require a site plan, probably building elevations, other information. There's no code requirement that they be done by a design professional. It's certainly easier. You know, the site plan should be to scale, for example. So there's a little bit of a higher bar if someone is applying for a conditional use permit than if they were to apply for rezoning.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
And just to be clear, so if something requires conditional use permit, it's not that the rezoning option is off the table, it's just that conditional use permit's probably easier to approve than a rezoning because of the rezoning opens it up to all kinds of things that weren't even intended by the owner or developer.
Okay.
Any other questions? I actually had a few. For the chart that's up there right now, whenever it says current, that is current law today in the municipal code. That's not the former proposal from the committee.
That is correct.
All right.
That's based on current regulations.
All right. If the new proposal were to be passed, it would not change what a property owner could do on a whim at all, right, with their property?
That is correct.
And then I was just also going to say that I do appreciate the committee's work of like trying to just go from the housing study, which was unanimously adopted by the governing body, a body that's more accountable to the public than we are, and suggested that things like this should be looked into, and then adjusting with the survey and the neighborhood meetings, and then adjusting again as we get public feedback. I know that the committee has been pulled in different directions from different folks, but that I appreciate the attempt to be responsive as possible. I believe we wrap up with that one, and then we move on to the discussion item, which is the same topic, but it's a different item on the agenda. And that is where people who have signed up for public comment can talk. Is that right?
Sure.
All right. All right. Then, anything further on update? Anything further for your update? All right. Then we'll wrap up on the update, but then move on to discussion items, which is the same topic. And should we just go straight to public comment for that? All right. And then should we go off of Amanda's list for that?
Yeah, start.
All right, all right. And just, I should have explained this earlier whenever we had someone speak on one of the zoning items, but there's, 4 minutes to speak. There's a little yellow light that goes off that indicates that you have 1 more minute. So if you see the yellow light and the first ding, no need to stop talking at that point. Then the red light will go off whenever your time has fully concluded. And we'll do our best to be efficient, because I imagine that there's a few people who want to speak on this one. Do we have questions from, I don't believe we do have questions for commissioners on this, like we do for zoning items. Is that?
Correct.
All right. All right. Then, Amanda, I think we'll go ahead and have you go through the list of folks who have signed up, if that.
Bruce Emmerich.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Chairman. I first want to say I very much appreciate your reconsideration and at least doing what you've done. That is immensely helpful. It helps us feel like we've been heard in this process in our neighborhoods. College Hill, by the way. The one thing I would just say, because it's used as a hammer and tries to make people feel guilty. When you say it's not my backyardism, drive College Hill. This is our backyard. We have duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes. We have apartment complexes. So I was talking to somebody who knows these things, and this is a suggestion, maybe a further refinement. And that's, I don't know the language, so I'm just going to own that, right? I don't know the language that you use. But is it possible to determine the density of duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes in an R1 or R2? Like, there's only so many Airbnbs, allowed per so many feet. Would that be possible? Because like I say, in our neighborhood, we have a lot of that. And we live with it, and they're our neighbors, and that's fine. But that would be my request, is could we at least look at that as a possibility, as a refinement to something? And again, I want to say thank you for listening, and thank you for those of you who've come to these neighborhood meetings. I know it's not comfortable. So I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Chairman and Commission and staff, for your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marie Hall.
Hi, my name is Marie Hall, and I live at 227 Southwest Woodlawn Avenue in the Potwin Place neighborhood. I grew up in Johnson County, where high housing costs led me to purchase half of a duplex as my first home, and then I even had to rent out the bottom to make that work. Multifamily housing wasn't necessarily what I desired, it was simply the option I could afford. That particular neighborhood was purposefully developed for multifamily housing with wide streets, long driveways, and extra parking areas so cars rarely line the street. The neighborhood was designed for the density of residents expected to live there. I later met and married my husband, who lived in Topeka. We easily determined we'd move to Topeka due to the affordability of housing. We sold my duplex and bought a lovely and larger single-family home in the Briarwood neighborhood for considerably less money. Just this week, I looked at both properties, and that duplex I sold in Johnson County appraises for $70,000 more than our former Briarwood home. I believe personally this may be why Topeka has fewer multifamily developments than other high-cost cities near us. My experience showed me that Topeka has single-family homes at a more accessible price point. 6 years ago, my husband and I moved to the Potwin Place neighborhood. Our decision to move to Potwin Place was due to the neighborhood and community more so than the particular house that we purchased. As part of a registered historic district, we've made many choices for our home that came with substantial costs in order to preserve its historic integrity. We chose those costlier routes because it was best for the home, while also appreciating that the neighborhood values supported those investments. To allow a house in Potwin Place to be converted to multifamily would inevitably impact historic characteristics, whether that's inside or outside the home. It seems this directly contradicts the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines for historic preservation. If houses are converted to multifamily and start losing their contributing historic status, that could eventually impact the status of the entire district, our access to historic tax credits, and reduce the value of our homes. I'm very concerned about potential changes to neighborhood characteristics. If you drive through Potwin Place, you'll notice that many of our homes have garages directly on an alley with no driveway to accommodate additional vehicles. I personally don't want to see our streets lined with cars. It impacts visibility and creates a safety issue for drivers, children, and animals. As you all know, Potwin Place is a destination and holiday tradition for many Topekans. Daily, we see vehicles slowly driving through the neighborhood to enjoy these homes. Our gardens and landscaping, the thousands of pieces of candy we give out at Halloween, and holiday decorations that light the night in December are our gift to those residents. If these houses are subdivided into rentals, participation in these traditions will likely diminish, leading to dark homes at the holidays, more parked cars lining the streets, and less neighborhood pride. Over time, Potwin Place will lose the unique identity that makes it one of Topeka's traditions. I don't believe that's what this committee or the residents of Topeka want. I fear this may be simply creating an opportunity for investors to make a profit at the expense of the well-loved neighborhoods we all call home. I do appreciate the update that was shared this evening, but this simply means that residents of my neighborhood in particular will need to organize to fight every single conditional use permit submitted in our neighborhood. I still strongly oppose this zoning proposal. It will impact the character of Potwin Place and the value of our homes. Thank you.
Jerry Palmer.
Thank you. My name is Jerry Palmer, and I live at 305 Southwest Greenwood, which also is in the Potwin District. I want to first thank Jim Kalp, my old friend, for listening to my concerns and the concerns of others, and to Mr. Hall, who spent 45 minutes with me on Friday addressing issues that I had raised very professionally, and I do appreciate that. I do appreciate that we are here tonight with the conditional use permit being there, even if it is only for political expediency, Jim. But I do have these remarks still to make, and that is that the conditional use permit certainly addresses the third point about the conversions, and the conversions from single family to multifamily is a great concern not only in Potwin, but I know also in College Hill and other places, because of the threat that it represents, and Potwin particularly had a background of that during World War II, and then the reconversion to single family. So it's a very sensitive issue in that regard. I still think that historic districts and conservation districts, however this level of planning is used, and I understand there's a distinction which to planners makes a lot of difference, and to me is more like a distinction without a difference, but nevertheless, the idea that these historic districts, conservation districts, probably should be excluded from it. Now, one thing Ms. Hall addressed was that there'll probably be opposition, at least in our neighborhood, to probably any kind of conversion like that. I think that will be true for also the other neighborhoods that are within these categories of conservation and historic districts, and they may take up a lot of staff time and planning commission time in the future addressing these issues on an individual basis. Moreover, most of these districts are pretty well built out, and there aren't a lot of vacant lots, and if they are, they're scattered and inefficient for home builders who would much rather have a block to work with to put up multifamily housing. Jim addressed that he would like to see, the numbers that I pulled out from Minneapolis were that in the single family areas, they had duplexes and triplexes also in Minneapolis, but for 2.5 years, which is the data that's really only can be considered from them, it turned out to be about 20 units per year. And we are 30% the size of Minneapolis. That converts to about 6 or 7 units if there's a complete conversion on that. And now if we're talking about just the small footprint of the districts we're talking about here, it does not represent very much of that geographic area and would provide, I think, a lot of hassles. So those are still my thoughts about why you should separately consider historic and conservation districts. And you can bring in College Hill, I think, into this by using wordage such as historic conservation districts or any neighborhood that includes such a historic district. And the college corridor is within College Hill. So thank you so much for your time.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask one quick question, Jerry. Jerry, I don't know if did you hear the explanation from my call, his comments regarding historic districts?
Well, yes, and in our conversation.
Okay. Is there anything that was said tonight?
He talks about it being essentially, it's what the neighborhood looks like rather than how the neighborhood buildings are used. Is that a fair characterization? And he sees that as a planning distinction. I've asked, the Planning Commission to ask staff. They may have access to better data than I do. I mean, I'm just a guy using the internet. This is their livelihood, and I think they're very good at it. I mean, I have no criticism at all of what staff has done. I understand that they're trying to fulfill the obligations under the 2020 policy, and you've mentioned, I thought it was 9,500. The numbers were 9,500 over time. You say 14,400, okay. You were still only talking about 6, 7, 8 units, and that's with all the R1s considered, rather than just a few districts that probably will cause you the most problems in the future. So, anything else, Jim?
No, thank you, Jerry.
Thank you very much.
John Parton.
Is it okay if I adjust this a little? Hi there. So my name's John Parton. I've spent most of my life as a renter. And Jim, your comments about sort of the animosity undercurrent about renters kind of resonated with me. I don't feel that there's been adequate comment from renters, and I don't think that the people here and the people commenting necessarily represent renters. Renters are about a third of Topeka. Virtually everyone here who's come to talk is a homeowner, myself included. I believe that proceeding without some more consideration of the people who this policy is likely to impact would be wrong and unjust. Studies show that when investors acquire single-family homes and convert them to rental units, they often reposition the property for higher market rate rents, displacing lower-income tenants. This process does not add truly affordable units. Instead, it replaces existing affordable stock with market rate rentals, which can increase neighborhood rent levels. The additional supply is absorbed by high-income renters and investors, driving prices up. Simon Buchler and Alana Lutz at the Lewis Center for Regional Policy Studies at UCLA suggest that it can take a decade or more for upzoning to positively impact rents. Without proper measures, the financial gains are privatized, while social costs, such as displacement and instability, are socialized. We already have a mechanism to alter the district zoning map. I mean, we discussed the rezoning. I'm not intimately familiar enough with the differences of conditional use. Maybe it's not that different. However, I do seriously question the wisdom in opening the floodgate to permitless duplexes. Before we proceed, I think we need to look more carefully at how this policy or these policies will be benefiting big management companies at the expense of displacing existing residents, accelerating gentrification, and extracting housing wealth from our communities and transferring it to distant or wealthy owners. We should consider policies similar to those in the tenant relocation and protection policy enacted in Vancouver, or the anti-displacement action plan enacted by Portland, or policies enacted by Kansas City and St. Louis. First, we can provide relocation assistance. When tenants are displaced by property conversions, they should not be left to fend for themselves. We can require landlords to pay financial stipends, such as 3 to 6 months rent, to help displaced tenants cover moving costs and bridge the gap to their next home. Second, we could enact tenant protection bylaws. They could require developers to not only pay for the relocation fees, but also to help displaced tenants find new housing. Third, we can support the creation of a true community land trust, not just a land bank, but a permanent nonprofit institution that owns land for the benefit of our community. We can look at the Kansas City Community Land Trust, where land is held in a trust to keep housing affordable. By converting the Topeka Land Bank before its dissolution in 2027 into a full permanent community land trust, we can ensure That as our city grows, the benefits stay in the hands of residents, not outside investors. Fourth, we can establish right to counsel for tenants. No one should face eviction alone in court. We can guarantee legal representation for low-income renters. How we can pay for that, we could leverage an impact fee on property conversions. So if a single-family home is turned into a duplex or multiplex, we can charge a fee, money that goes directly into the funds for tenant services. St. Louis has proposed a similar idea. These are all practical ideas by real communities. These policies could work together to prevent displacement, promote housing stability, and ensure that development benefits the entire community, not just property owners. Without policies like these, rubber stamp multiplexes would probably hurt the more vulnerable in our community. I don't think, to me, the benefit could justify the potential harm of so many people in Topeka. If you'd like questions, I'd certainly try to answer some.
We strayed a little bit from it, but we're actually not doing questions.
Okay, very good.
But thank you.
Yep.
Jim Showalter.
Thank you for changing the concept behind this and changing all R1s to a different format. I still have strong reservations as a homeowner. I'm Jim Showalter, 3621 Southwest Yorkway, here in Topeka. We own a home in Westboro, and when we purchased the home, it was all single-family dwelling. And now, then, unfortunately, the proposal is to change neighborhoods to being single-family homes to anything in your neighborhood. I'm glad to hear that you're taking some steps to soften that blow. I would, however, request that you go back to the neighborhoods and say, do you want this to occur? I think if you would poll Westboro, if you would poll Potwin, if you'd poll a number of neighborhoods, they would concur that they want to remain single-family dwellings, homes, residential dwellings exclusively. But I do appreciate the changes that you've made. I'm anxious to have an opportunity to digest those and come to some additional conclusion. Thank you.
Alice Ann Oliver.
Good evening. I am Alice Ann Oliver. I live in Potwin Place at 201 Greenwood. I would like to thank you. The proposed upzoning of the city of Topeka has unified our neighbors and our neighborhoods. We have shared meetings, we have shared information, we have shared ideas, and we have shared possible solutions. We want affordable, quality housing in the city of Topeka. All we are asking is that you reach out and have a conversation with every neighborhood. There is simply not a solution of the one-size-fits-all. Auburndale, College Hill, Collins Park, Elmhurst, Kenwood, Old Town, Potwin Place, Ward Mead, Westboro. We have found our voice and we have started a conversation. We want to talk about how to balance our needs as neighborhoods with the city's need for affordable and quality housing. We are here today. We will be back next week, next month. We will continue to come back until there is an equitable solution for all of our neighbors and our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Chris Irwin.
That's just not even fair. Okay, well, get into it. These are extra copies. I didn't have a chance to get them. Yeah, I'm at a disadvantage because I can't speak like that, or if I could, I was her age at the time. So my name is Chris Irwin, and I am from Collins Park Association. I'm the president of the Neighborhood Association. I live at 1406 Southwest Eden Court, Little Tiny Street, 11 houses, part of Collins Park, which most of you know starts west at Oakley, goes up to Randolph on the west side, up to Randolph School, from 15th to Huntoon. We consider ourselves to be a very close-knit, exciting, loving community. I moved in 1986 when my oldest was 3. I'm still there. I have a swing set in the front yard that was moved to 3 different houses. It's wooden. We moved it 4 doors down, back 1 door, back 1 more door, and now it's back in my yard because my grandkids are using it. I don't have a backyard, so that's where the swing set is. That's Collins Park. For those of you who don't get into those streets, they are a little bit hard to drive through sometimes. They are curved streets filled with moderately sized single-family homes. They are different styles, Tudor Revival, Colonial Revival, and Cape Cod-styled homes. We are located in central Topeka, and we are close to Washburn University. We're probably best known for the 4th of July parade, which is 54 years this year, and has everything. It's kind of a quasi-political affair if you ever come during an election year. But it's also a ton of fun, and we have our musical instruments and the bagpipes come. And while my kids were there, my grandkids are there now, and actually this year we'll have a great-grandchild there too. I'm not sure how that happened. So at our neighborhood core is our shining star, which is our 4-block-long green space of the same name, which is Collins Park. It's the center of our community engagement. You'll often find people there at wee hours. Well, I say wee hours. Moms are out there at 6 and 6:30 with kids who are not sleeping well. We have lots of neighbors who come from other areas to play in the park. We feel very fortunate to have that space. In fact, my heart really broke for Old Town, and I just wanted to write him a check. I don't know. That was a very sad situation to me. We feel very fortunate to have the parade. We have other things that go on in Collins Park that bring us all together. And when we started to talk about this upzoning, as we knew it, we came together again. What we want to say is we do oppose the proposal to eliminate single-family housing citywide. We do appreciate the change, the offer today. We're not sure exactly what that means, because I will also say that I don't know all of the verbiage and what that means. We do believe that we need to protect our neighborhoods as much as we can, and we want quality housing, affordable housing, and whatever we can do to help not only our neighbors, we will do it to help other neighbors in Topeka as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask?
We're not doing questions.
Okay.
Jolene Gravel.
Well, Jim made my testimony a little bit harder because we have to change some of it now. But like everybody else, I want to thank you for the change of eliminating the outright duplexing, because when I have talked to people, that's the first thing everybody is, you mean what? Is the question you get. So thank you for taking that off the table. I hope it stays off the table. It's not clear to me if that means you're still keeping single-family zoning citywide. I didn't hear any clarity on that, so that's a question I have. My name's Jolene Grable. I live in Collins Park. I've been there since 1991. I've seen a lot of changes in the neighborhood over that time, more renters. We now have students from Washburn living in houses as groups, which is kind of causing a parking problem in some areas. We have a lot more people that are, structures that are owned by folks not living in the neighborhood, which is a little concerning to me. And we have a lot more renters, and we do have at least one that I'm aware of, Airbnb. So there have been changes over that time, which is of course going to happen, but sometimes we need to reconsider what's happening and make that adjustments. What I do want to say about Collins Park is everybody talks about historic neighborhoods and old 100-year-old neighborhoods, and they're thinking about Victorian houses. Collins Park is 102 years old. We were platted in 1923. And something I discovered I want to share with you about the neighborhood history, which I did not know, but I found it in the wonderful Topeka Library, Topeka room, and there's a little folder that has a Collins Park history in it, and it says this, which I want you to know because we are not a historic district. There was a survey done by the city in 2018 of all the houses in the neighborhood, and it was determined that we would qualify. We had 5 years to do it. We did not do it. So we are not a historic district. We are not a conservation district. So we sit here unprotected from anything that might challenge the status and the quality of our neighborhood. Okay, so back to the report from the library. And this document did not have a date on it, so I can't tell you that. The Collins Park neighborhood is significant to the city of Topeka because it signifies a change in architecture, street layout, and Topekan style of living. Previously, American subdivisions had used a traditional grid system to lay out streets and homes. Collins Park displays a more modern technique from that day with curving streets and home layouts following existing land contours and topographical features. Streets and homes were designed around the open space in the middle of the area called Collins Park. And yeah, it's kind of confusing. The neighborhood is Collins Park and the park is Collins Park. But another thing about the neighborhood that was accentuated was the fact that both Randolph Elementary, which was built in 1927 to our east, and Westboro Mart to our west, which is classic Mission and Spanish colonial architecture inspired by the Plaza in Kansas City, which was built in 23. I couldn't find the date for Westboro Mart's building. But those anchors on both sides, plus the creative strategy for laying out the neighborhood in the middle, it makes a community that's unique, historic, and significant. And I just needed to say that to you. So in that respect, one of my big concerns that I still have is whether or not what we're doing here, because I've heard Mr. Kaup respectfully say we're getting rid of regulations to developers. I want to know how that still is implemented and influenced by the change in the proposal. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Jolene is another longtime friend and acquaintance, so, and thank you for your testimony, Jolene. But she did ask the question. She did ask the question as to whether or not the proposed...
I took note of it, and she's got an email address.
Well, folks here today are hearing the same thing. That in the previous conference, Jolene also used the same term, eliminate single-family zoning. And no, the proposal does not. You still have single-family zoning, R1 and R2. But if this were to happen, if the governing body were to adopt what we're talking about tonight, on that, it's still single-family zoning, but people who own that single-family property would have the right to request from the city a conditional use permit to make some use of the property other than single family. But the zoning is single family. It's just there would be one more permitted use subject to the issuance of a conditional use permit.
Okay. Yeah, I can ask you questions about that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Jolene.
Ginger Neiman Harper.
Good evening. We didn't color coordinate, but Collins Park showed up in our green. So my name's Ginger Neiman Harper, and I'm a nearly 10-year resident of Topeka residing in the Collins Park neighborhood. Thank you for your time this evening. I really have 3 points in opposition to the proposal that was previously stated. Obviously, it's changed a little bit now, but I think a lot of my points are still valid. First, the citywide nature of this proposal is short-sighted and will likely not result in providing more affordable housing, especially in the desired missing middle infill. Second, development of any kind, but especially to increase density and create long-term sustainable neighborhoods, should be done with thoughtful planning and in cooperation with the developers, existing residents, and should be done with existing and future infrastructure capacity in mind. And third, while the desire is to increase housing options in Topeka, it should not be done by eliminating one currently existing choice, which is to live in a single-family zoned neighborhood. According to the city's 2020 study, that has been referenced several times, this undertaking should be done in a strategic manner. A blanket one-size-fits-all approach to zoning does not fit strategic. Duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes have a place in urban planning, and I have been told by others have already working well in certain Topeka neighborhoods. They may also have their place in new neighborhoods throughout the city. They likely do not, however, fit everywhere, and so the city should continue to seek to differentiate between the two. Maintaining the city's ability to thoughtfully plan and develop these critical missing housing types should be held through careful application of this type of zoning, which is not what is being proposed, again, has been modified some tonight. Increasing density could and will have long-term impacts on the infrastructure of our neighborhoods. Many of our neighbors are already feeling the impact of stresses on things like water and sewer lines, and we have all had our stormwater systems tested lately with recent rainfall. It's likely, given the age of central Topeka, that these stormwater systems are already undersized for current rainfall events, and more runoff will only exacerbate the issue. Parking is also a concern for neighborhoods such as Collins Park that do not have alleys. Living right on Collins Park, I have documented past issues with inadequate parking for those already utilizing our beautiful park area. Adding more households and cars, which will be the only option due to limited public transportation options in many of our neighborhoods, will increase the parking issues and may or may not be suitable for long term. Development should be done in coordination with those doing the developing in order for them to make a sizable, meaningful investment in the community. What will meet the need for the missing middle housing more adequately? A developer willing to invest wholly in a neighborhood with quality right-sized housing that meets safety needs such as fire and life safety elements and quality of life amenities for their residents? Or one-off property owners who may not be capable landlords and require more time and resources from city personnel to ensure very basic code requirements are met? Finally, my family chose to live in Topeka after moving here from Washington, D.C. I imported a Michigander as well. We chose a neighborhood of single-family homes with a community feel, neighborhood events, and neighbors we can call friends. I am actually what you might call a reverse commuter now, in that my family is continuing to live in Topeka, even though I now commute to Kansas City 5 days per week. One reason my husband, who works remotely for a company based on the East Coast, and I have chosen to stay in Topeka is we simply love our neighborhood. We haven't been able to replicate the historic charm, the affordability, the green space, or the neighbors in other communities closer to my job. My family's stable housing is one of my greatest blessings and one that every family in Topeka deserves. I wholeheartedly echo my neighbors and others that have talked about that, I think our neighborhoods actually do have some solutions and have some things that we'd like to add to the conversation. However, this proposal, I don't believe, makes that hope a reality. So thank you for your time this evening.
Mark Galbraith. Mark. Mary Jane Helbust.
Hello, I'm Mary Jane Helbust. I live in the 1500 block of Boswell. I'm a longtime resident of our neighborhood in College Hill. Actually, I thought it was interesting. We moved from a duplex in the 700 block of Polk to go to Boswell and become enamored with the neighborhood that we are currently in and have been for more than 50 years. We bought from a single-family home, or single family, and I hope shortly sometime that we'll be able to sell the house to another family, hopefully with kids. And we have watched over the years as when we moved in, it was we were the only folks with kids in the family. and then watched as kids grew up. Older people came, older people left, and more younger people coming in. And so this presents itself for this concept of ongoing consistency with a neighborhood and the extraordinary events, activities, and materials that we have within the community. It's one of those things I like to maintain that type of atmosphere in our community. And the other thing I'd probably, maybe someone else might not mention it, sort of like I was going to say this concept of I speak for the trees. It's one of those things where I think College Hill is known for the materials that they have. In my yard, I've got iris and peonies and lilacs and forsythia and other plants that were there from the time the house was built. And that's one of the things that we like about our community is the flowers and the entities, just the botanical approach, in addition to Boswell Park. And we would like to make sure that everyone who moves into our community, can maintain that love for the neighborhood, learn to love their neighbors, and to take care of it as we think that the existing neighbors have. And so, anyway, I'm hoping for the best of the neighborhood for College Hill.
Dwayne Pomeroy.
Dwayne Pomeroy, 1619 Jewel, and I have lived in 7 different Central Topeka neighborhoods in my 73 years. 3 as a renter, 3 as a homeowner, and 1 neighborhood where I was both a renter and a homeowner. I do appreciate the proposed changes, so that is an improvement. One of the points made was that the notification for those that own property within 200 feet of a proposed change, 200 feet is not even a full block. So that is not adequate, especially not when we did this downzoning where the entire neighborhood was involved. The downzoning was basically reflective zoning. It was a deliberate, comprehensive process involving all stakeholders in a neighborhood. That the whole citywide, it took 12 to 15 years to do that. This proposal is still upzoning, and if it is to happen, I would suggest that it should be done one neighborhood at a time in conjunction with their neighborhood plans. I thought it was interesting that in the argument for an earlier thing on the agenda, it was cited that the proposal was in keeping with the Old Town NIA neighborhood plan. Okay, this is not in keeping with any of those neighborhood plans. Thank you.
All right. I believe that is everyone who's signed up. So, do any
process?
All right. So, just.
I'm sorry. I have signed up. I spoke to you earlier today. I spoke to, I believe it's Paul Turner as well. I have an email. Steve Stanford.
All right. All right.
Thank you very much. I'm Steve Stanford. I'm a homeowner in Westboro, but tonight I want to speak as a board member for the Westboro Homeowners Association and report on our neighborhood's recent concerns with the current upzoning proposal and as well as the update we've heard tonight. We too appreciate the changes that have been made. I believe we still will have concerns. At the outset of my comments, I want to mention that Westboro neighborhoods support the city's efforts to address affordable housing. We applaud the city staff's work on a multitude of affordability issues. In looking at this process, we've had the opportunity to review a lot of the work that's been done. We've looked at the city housing market study as well, and much of the work we support. Homeowners in Westboro and many other central Topeka neighborhoods have made substantial investments in our single-family neighborhoods. They do so in part because they believe single-family zoning is important to preserve the character of older, established Topeka neighborhoods. Unlike newer areas of Topeka, central Topeka neighborhoods are not protected by HOAs or restrictive deeds. We rely on city zoning for stability. And until recently, the city agreed with us. They agreed on the importance of single-family zoning. In fact, the city worked closely with neighborhoods, Mr. Pomeroy has discussed it on numerous occasions, to downzone many areas to create greater neighborhood stability. The city also partnered with Westboro and Elmhurst to create neighborhood conservation districts, NCDs, to again promote stability in our older neighborhoods. So it's not unreasonable for homeowners to react against a dramatic change in zoning requirements. The current proposal to upzone is both unexpected and inconsistent with recent city policies. I think city homeowners are also disappointed about the level of engagement with the neighborhoods. We've only come to learn about this proposal recently. I think it was through Alice Ann on July 13th. We're concerned about that. We think there needed to be a great deal more of city engagement. And I think one point that we would like to make, upzoning is not planning at all. It's simply deregulation. And it places the neighborhood's livability in the hands of individual homeowners and developers. So when we met on August 3rd, we had more than 100 homeowners in attendance. I'm going to shorten my remarks here. We have two asks. One, pump the brakes on citywide upzoning and return to a system where we're addressing this on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, just like we did for downzoning. Two, much like Jerry Palmer, we suggest that the city continue to extend the protections provided by NCDs and historic districts. Frankly, we don't think that's broad enough. There are a number of healthy districts as well that we think should be protected, but we would like you to at least consider that as an option as well. And finally, because we've talked about it, we've looked at the citywide housing study, and I just want to share this observation. The city and its partners need to be strategic with where to focus residential development. Identifying and planning residential projects that leverage existing community anchors and historic districts help promote stability and connectedness within the community. We agree. I hope you will listen to the residents here tonight. Hear their voices, hear their concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. I believe that is it. And so I was going to talk a bit about what the next steps are. We are not voting on this tonight. We are going to, I believe, schedule a public hearing for our next meeting, which I believe is September 15th. In which, of course, if you would like, you can come back, you can provide comment written or spoken testimony at that point as well. Or if you feel like are familiar with your concerns, no need to. And then the committee will be on Thursday at like 9 or 10 a.m.
So this item's being presented to the governing by the council, City Council's Policy and Finance Committee on Thursday at,
Dan, I think that's Thursday at 10 o'clock, I
10
think.
a.m.
All right.
Thank you.
So yes, the committee is going to be presenting to the Policy and Finance Committee, which is 3 of the council members, again, trying to get feedback from folks who are more accountable to the public, directly accountable to the public than we happen to be because of our structure. And then that public hearing and potential vote in September, at which point it goes to the, even if we do recommend that it moves forward to the next step, that does not make it law. It would then go to the city council, where the city council would review it, potentially provide feedback, and do whatever it is that they see as the correct thing to do with it. Am I missing any step?
That's what we have so far.
All right, sounds good. With that, I believe that we have covered that. And so I will move on from our discussion items on to communications to the commission.
Commissioners, so a case of interest to you. You might remember Maverick was remanded back to you. The Maverick case at 6th and Fairlawn was remanded back to you. And you heard it again in July, is that right? Yeah. And sent it back to the governing body with a couple changes. The governing body ultimately turned it down. So that project was not approved by the governing body.
All right. Just real quick, if people could keep the volume down, we still do have items on our agenda. All right.
There will be a public hearing on this item. Okay. The next meeting.
Yeah. The gentleman sitting next to me, he had as much notice as I did. He wanted to speak, and he didn't know about his time. So he said, have 2 people in this room who wanted to speak, and didn't know the time.
Yes, for the 6th. Are you talking about for the 6th? I got an email for the 6th. Okay, good. Is that the right one? The most recent? I got one. I don't know if it's the updated one.
All right.
Stay in touch.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so
I'll start over. How about
yes,
that?
with the communications to the commission.
So just want to let you know that the Maverick case, which was a convenience store at 6th and Fairlawn that the governing body remanded back to you. You heard it again on at the July meeting and sent it back with some changes. The governing body took that up earlier this month and ultimately did not approve it. They voted that down. So that is what's happened with that. And I guess another point here from Mr. Copley, the text amendment's not technically a public hearing. That's a good point. People will be required to sign up to speak on that, so we will have to make sure we try to get the word out as best we can on that for that upcoming meeting.
And I guess right now we can clarify, you can either email Amanda or you can sign up at topekaspeaks.org. Is that the two best ways to do that?
Absolutely.
All right.
I don't think I have anything else for communications.
Okay.
The general email address is planning@topeka.org. It's really easy to remember.
All right.
Thanks, Mike.
So just to clarify, you shouldn't be emailing a person on staff directly unless it's a man, correct?
Right. I mean, we obviously will do our best to get anything to her, but yeah, it's probably best to email her directly.
Then we'll move on from communications to the commission and go to general public comment. Anyone for that one?
Sign up for that.
All right.
Never signed up.
All right.
I think I maybe signed up incorrectly. I don't know. Maybe I sent the wrong email to
Okay.
address or
This is one where, yeah, you're intended to sign up, but we in the past have let people speak if there's been some issue. But so, all right. And it's I think, same thing at 4 minutes. The yellow light is 1 minute.
Okay. Okay. So my name is Jackson Woods. I'm a resident of Elmhurst. Thank you to the city staff, housing committee members, and commissioners. Despite a steady population, my impression is we need more housing to replace existing stock as it ages and bring down prices. I think that's a factual impression. Some people might put that up for debate, and that colors how they view the issue. So if we want a broad range of people at various stages in their life in Topeka, we should ensure that there's housing options that are affordable and attainable, and they're going to want different things. So we should have apartments, houses, condos, townhomes. So we're welcome to people at various stages of their life, from birth, education, working, and then retirement. Topeka will do better by increasing the proportion of housing options that aren't just single-family housing. I think concentrating too much on any one kind of housing is unwise, as the city seems to have overall with single-family detached homes. But by the same token, concentrating duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes in select neighborhoods is not wise either. Turning vacant lots and properties into developed and occupied properties does not reduce property values. If there's any effect, it increases them. So I understand that builders and developers want to do their work, and it's good that we're reviewing the process that they go through, and we're having conversations. I think we should be careful about saying any particular speaker represents any particular group of people in a room. I know it's tricky, everybody's different. And it might be that some people are in a place where this isn't as much of an issue for them, where they're at in their life, versus versus a person who could be their neighbor, but they never do become their neighbor because that opportunity just isn't there. So I don't think developers and builders are inclined to make investments that won't make a return, i.e. go unoccupied. If these changes will help get homes built and occupied, I think that's better for the city's budget. Denser development is more sustainable and is financially smarter for the city through reduced infrastructure costs. And this is important because, as I understand, much of our infrastructure is reaching its end of life and we'll need to replace it soon. So budgeting for that, I think denser development will help us afford those infrastructure costs. It's not a small amount, as you know, especially when we want to cover all the different programs for the city. We don't want to have to cut any corners. So I think the market will do this on its own, but if you're skeptical of this proposal, maybe we could pilot denser duplex, triplex, quadplex development where it's needed most and where it's most likely to succeed, such as transit corridors, for example, rather than just saying, no, we're not going to do this. There's been too much pushback. I understand the situation that commissioners and council are in, and I'm not jealous of it one bit. But I do think there's a solution that can be found where there's a win-win scenario for everybody. And just aside from this issue, I want to point out that it was not clear to me on the Topeka Speaks website how to sign up for the public comment, or which email address to do. Maybe in like the agenda, I know there's a statement in there where you need to sign up beforehand. Maybe more details about how to do that could be included in there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. With that being public comment, that is the last item on our agenda. And so for tonight, we are adjourned.